Okay, so we got 7 of us. Oh, we got more. We got 8 people. Great. So can everybody raise their hand if they're already doing stronger memory? If your village is already doing it. So we have
more people not doing it than
more,
doing it.
okay. More people, about half and half, maybe? Well, you're right. A little bit more people who haven't done stronger memory yet. Okay, great.
Had you heard about stronger memory like a couple years ago when it was introduced at the national conference? Anybody, or is this the first time you're hearing about it?
First time.
Okay.
I've heard about it before, and I think Cheverly Village is just waiting on either an outside group called Maryland, or what's it?
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that they're and we're going to be part of their program when they get it. So hopefully we're going to start it soon. But I'm just curious to get more information because I'm part of the people that try to organize the groups and find a place and how to do it. And of course, it has to be on Zoom, which again, we need the Durant program to get more of our people comfortable at coming into meetings because that seems to be the problem.
Is it fair to say that Diane, you are probably one of the exceptions to doing in person? I'm not sure. I hope you'll forgive me. I purposely didn't invite someone from Stronger Memory, the Stronger Memory program. I just wanted this to do a presentation. I just wanted this to be a conversation amongst us so that we could really talk about what has worked with the program, what it takes to make it a success. We've had mixed success, and I think I know what the reasons, but I can fully believe that the in-person aspect of it does allow for a certain, camaraderie.
Of course.
That, we won't get on Zoom. A challenge for my village is that finding a space for 12 people to sit comfortably is a little difficult. We don't have, we have a conference room in our office, but it's a little bit tight, and a lot of people aren't comfortable doing in person quite yet. And in our city, meeting space is not, it's not free. It's definitely not free. It's not even cheap in some aspects. So you're going to be going to a restaurant or a cafe or something if you're going to do it. And that's, I don't know.
How about a library?
I haven't found, I'm sorry, but I haven't found the Zoom aspect to be an issue for my members. As I mentioned, I think for some of them, that's why they've kept participating, because
Yes.
it's easy. I do think for some of our programming, I'm seeing Zoom fatigue. Honestly, people are, we had our town hall yesterday, and we've heard from members they want movie night back. They want to go out. They want to go out to dinner, which is things we're not doing at this point. And if we are in person with our exercise class and that type of thing, people need to be masked. And that's, one of our healthcare committee's requirements. It's easier to see and hear people without masks. So for us personally, the Zoom is really what's kept it going almost. As I mentioned, I think people were thrilled to meet each other in person at the party, or the reception. It wasn't a party, it was an open house reception. But I think in general, Zoom has not been an issue for my participants.
I don't think it's been a detriment. I think that the great majority of Stronger Memory sessions have been on Zoom. Certainly, I think even the ones that, well, I don't want to speak for the ones at Goodwin Living. They've done.
I think, Seal, in answer to what you said in the beginning, I think perhaps for us, the in-person has been better because you're right, Lynn, we are in a community, we're in a gated community, but the people said that coming out and meeting at the clubhouse gets them going for the day. Otherwise, it's too easy to just be, click on a Zoom and you can just be however you are and not necessarily go leaving. You could still be in your place, and that might make you stay there. You'll find things to do and not really get out.
I think Diane also had a question. I saw her hand.
But you can finish your comment first, or
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I have a question about the program. In terms of, I understand that I'm familiar with it. There's these components. It's math and writing, and was it reading out loud?
Reading out loud, yes.
Okay, and I'm interested in I guess the facilitated part. Like, is there a guide towards if somebody agrees to be a facilitator,
Yes,
how to go about doing that?
Stronger Memory has a guide for facilitators, with hints as to, how to run the meetings, how to run the weekly check-ins, what, sorts of questions to ask. We followed the guide at the beginning. At this point, I think in every group, I think kind of forms their own way of doing things. And so, I did read through the guide. I did use it initially, but it's not something that you follow step by step. After a few weeks, you'll find that, you've got the information and you can move on. The other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't mention at the larger session was that during maybe once a month or so, I do send brain health information articles out to the participants. So in that way, it also gives us something else to discuss in addition to the member check-in. So I did neglect to mention that, and I wanted to share that.
And is there a cost to getting the facilitator materials, or?
When you sign on, we connected with Goodwin House, who was presented at the national conference, and they had a workbook that was $17 at that time. Looking at it now in hindsight, it had some of the basic math pages. It had some cues for writing. Initially, they said, just write for 10 minutes. People would say, well, what am I going to write about? So this manual had some cues, ideas like, what was your first job? Where did your family go on vacations? What was a political event that you remember in your lifetime in detail? The reading out loud was like Lynn had said, it could be for anybody, any place. The ones who, Colleen, go ahead. You ask a question.
Oh, before you do that, I just wanted to add that I don't think there's a charge if you get it electronically. I don't believe
I think so. I looked that up the other day. I think if you want the manuals or the booklets, workbooks, then
you
you
could get
pay
it
for it, but
digitally.
you could download it and then I suppose print it out, which still is going to cost the village some money. I want to clarify something. I thought when I was reading that and what I've read, because we're really seriously looking for, first of all, space and then trying to, elicit people to join the group. It meets weekly. I mean, it meets daily, right?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, I thought it was 5 day a week.
The thing is, there's a 7 days in a week. The requirement was to try to have people 5 out of the 7 days do those 3 activities. And then you have a weekly meeting
on their own.
Yes.
Oh, so they do the 5 days individually at home.
Right. And then
meet once a week.
Right.
Oh, thank God, because first of all, when you're living in a town with lots of hills, there's nobody going to walk anywhere. And I can imagine finding rides for 9 people every day for half an hour and then bring them back home again. It was going to be a logistic nightmare.
And it was interesting in those first meetings. It was very interesting to see, because you wanted to say, okay, anybody having any problems, and people will talk about what they found difficult or not difficult. But the thing was, getting together for those first meetings, and you got an idea of who was going to be really dedicated, who was OCD. Like there was one person who said, I don't eat my dinner unless I have my activities done. Others said, I had to do my activities first thing in the morning. Others said, I did 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the night. So whatever worked for everybody, it was theirs. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a question?
Oh,
yeah, I have. No,
Oh,
did you say
I was
Clarine?
gonna
I
answer,
didn't hear.
but I think you answered it, so.
You probably
Thank you.
did answer it, and I think just wanted to say that in our county, the reason we haven't had any in-person events this winter, except for Scrabble and games, and people can do that and laugh and play games and not eat and drink or do anything with wearing masks. But the COVID uptake in the county went from low, which we decided didn't require masks. It was totally optional for your own personal safety, but it went to moderate. So I could see that when spring comes, when you can open the doors and the windows or have an outdoor gathering in a town park, we could have our meetings again. And hopefully it's going to go down, but that really dictated why we're trying to stick to Zoom.
And
So,
quite honestly, in considering our population, as soon as you hear about the numbers going up again, that gets people, wanting to just lay low and not do things. But I agree with Lynn, even though we didn't do Zoom, uh, there is a certain advantage to the Zoom in terms, especially if you have transportation issues or physical issues to get from point A to point B, that would be more advantageous. And as we're seeing here, if people have their cameras on, you could tell who's engaged and who's not engaged.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, because as I mentioned, we're a 55 plus community, and we had some people, have some people living in a community that are showing signs of some cognitive deficits other than just the aging kind of thing. And I was hoping when the word went out for volunteers, that they would sign up, or at least in this case, that maybe the adult children would encourage them to do that. In the first group, that wasn't it. Some people were interested, but when they heard that they had to do homework, that was the draw for them. They didn't want to do homework. That's been there, done that. But others recognize the fact. And in this group that I have right now, there's one person definitely diagnosed, and there's a couple that are going through testing now. But even having said that, one of the things that I see very strongly from the beginning to the now, and I had it confirmed by the one person's family, that she is just so much more socialized and going and outgoing since she did the stronger memory thing. So, and I have quite honestly looked at it as the socialization aspect. And no matter how many come, that's a benefit to those few, whoever does it. Go ahead,
so what
Diane.
actually happens at the group, the get together, a weekly meeting? I mean, you do the same thing?
The thing is, in the beginning, we had some guidelines about talking about the focus and the benefits, and what you had to do to ensure that your brain was working the best that you can. And it ties in with all the other stuff that we hear about. Make sure you eat right, make sure you sleep well, make sure you hydrate. And people would share some of the things that they were having difficulty with, and finding how many people try to go to sleep with the TV, and that's the thing that they say is not necessarily a good thing. So it got to be a discussion about that. And nowadays it's a similar thing. But quite honestly, people are talking about, well, I got out of the habit. I'm not doing my activities now, but I want to get back into it. Anybody reading any good books, and then they'll talk about it. Or if I have something there, take time, everybody read a little bit. The difficulty about the mask and unmasked part, I have to say, is when you're discussing, uh, depending on the number of people that have hearing issues and have a mask on, that having that mask doesn't let them say things the best of their ability, or other people hear things.
That's
So,
right.
not having the mask gives you an advantage. And where we are, quite honestly, they've been super strict. They were super strict about the number of people meeting in the clubhouse, whether you wear a mask or not. Most people are not wearing masks at this point in time, but those who are immune suppressed, or didn't get vaccinated for whatever reason or whatever, they will come with masks, or a spouse or somebody comes and finds out things and takes it back, or we communicate through email. But that has sort of dropped off now a little bit. The ones who are meeting are the ones who are meeting.
I do it a little bit different. What we do is I call it, our weekly meetings are a check-in. And so every participant reports out as to how their week went, what activities they did, what activities they didn't do. And then I ask each person to read one of their essays from the week. It kind of does, we have discussed, one of the members will, they might talk about what book they're reading out loud, and that'll go into a mini book discussion or something along those lines. But we do kind of stick to the format of reporting out so that everybody has the opportunity to share what they're seeing, what they're feeling. And then I usually, if I've sent an article on brain health that week, we'll discuss that. But if I haven't, it's a more free form, kind of check in, and then wherever sometimes their essays take others, will prompt others to share as well. And so in that way, the group has been able to connect and really get to know each other.
I had been the facilitator from the beginning, and there was one time where I had to leave because I had a doctor's appointment. I don't know if you guys have found that you don't dare cancel a doctor's appointment. You might not get it for a few months or a few weeks more. So if you got it, you got it. So I remember saying, okay, I've got to leave here. Please don't the rest of you leave. Just stick on, keep going. And, I left. And most of the times our meetings last for an hour to an hour and a quarter. I've heard people saying 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever goes with your particular group, you go for it. But with that particular meeting, the next meeting time, somebody says, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but we actually we went for an hour and a quarter. We went even longer than when you were here. So I said, okay, do you want me to fire myself? And he said, no, keep going. But just wanted you to know we did good, So that was a positive thing. Clarine, you have a few.
Yes, I think there was another thing I read. It's a 12-week or 13-week
Yes.
program. So it's whoever's taking on to be the facilitator. It's a big commitment every week to be in charge of one event. I mean, to me, like being in charge of bingo or Scrabble and games once a month is kind of like that month comes around really fast, and you're talking about weekly meetings. Is there more than one of you that would be
So
the facilitator, or could you facilitate once the group gets established? Let them, maybe one of them be the facilitator for on a rotating basis.
I'm sure once your group gets established, you could bail out. I've chosen not to because I like the opportunity to, see these members and speak to them on a weekly basis.
Sure.
It is a 12-week program. However, at the end of the 12 weeks, I gave my group an option. Do you want to keep meeting? Your 12 weeks are over. A couple of them said, I think I've got it. I think I am going to continue to do the program.
okay.
I just don't need the weekly check-ins. But the majority of them wanted to keep meeting. And so we still meet. We did start a second group that we then, kind of asked anybody who wanted to continue to roll into the first group so that I didn't need to do it twice a week after a while. But the majority of the first group still wanted to meet. The second group did not bond as closely.
And it's funny, I'm the exact opposite. In my first group at the end, maybe week 10, 11, and 12, I had a fall down in numbers because of medical reasons or family things. And when I asked the group if they wanted to continue, no thanks, been there, done that. We know what to do. We'll keep doing it. Well, that's one of the things that I find about meeting is the reinforcement or the buddy to go ahead and do it. So this second group, there are 7 to 9 that said right up front, week 10, we want to continue on afterwards. And they are the ones that are continuing. And granted, there are sometimes there might be only 3 of them, and sometimes there'll be the 9.
Okay.
So it just, you go with the flow. And I have found both with dealing with the caring group and just everything in general, I find that things not too formal get better responses than more formal. So following the guideline and having the basic structure was good, but following to the letter, if people come in and they have something to talk about. And again, a lot of the participants are solos. They live in a household by themselves. So when they verbalize something, it gives the others an opportunity to give their opinion, and other opinions have other opinions going on. So it seems to be a support group, a support generally, as opposed to just a stronger memory group.
Absolutely. Diana Smith, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to know, so like, how do you, I'll say, advertise it to your community then?
So what we did was we put in our newsletter and our email blast a brief description of the Stronger Memory Program, which I got off the Goodwin site. We had an introductory meeting where I talked about the program. I talked about what it would, entail, and what the I don't want to say requirements, but what the recommendations are for the participants. And then after the introductory meeting, I asked all who were interested in signing up to do so. And I sent out a doodle poll to those people for the best day and time. And then we launched.
For myself, I got permission to put out an email for myself, as opposed to being a committee chair or whatever. So I put in an email out to the community, and like Lynn, put a little synopsis of what it was according to Goodwin House, and said, if interested, contact me either by email or phone. And those who did by phone had some additional questions, like what was said here. We have to meet every day versus not? And, just talking about and why they wanted handwriting versus typing or computers. And for those of you who had any question about that, the whole idea is to get as many portions of the brain activated as possible. And when you are doing things in handwriting, you are activating the muscles in your hand, you're getting the thought to your mobile part of your brain. So that's the premise for doing some things more. When you're responding to the cues about a particular thing, you're delving into your memory portion. Some people very adamantly said, I don't like any of these questions, and they went out and bought a book, because there are a lot of things on the market out there now for things to leave your family, things you wanted your family to know. And it's basically the same type of things. It's asking questions and you delving into those things. And the reading out loud, again, one of the things I personally, I'll share two things, and Seals, you've heard this before, one of the other things. When you're reading out loud, you don't really recognize the fact that some of the words that you actually have to think about saying all syllables of the word. Whereas when you're looking at it, you know the word, you know what it means, and you just continue reading. You're not saying the word. So again, you're articulating and using those muscles of the mouth. The other thing is with the mouth part, it's simple math. Simple. In fact, they said use the word arithmetic versus math, because math automatically implies a higher level of that. And it is truly simple: addition, subtraction, basic 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns. Then if you wanted to, you could get additional pages that have the multiplications, not necessarily the division, because the division was showing that it sort of stumped people. It got them logged down and they got frustrated. So the people who do the research said stick with the addition, subtraction, multiplication. For me, you've got 10 minutes to do it, and you have this book. I didn't want to write on the book, so I had the book that had the numbers, the problems, and I wrote the answers in another book. And I got to the point where, as I was doing it, I was reading out loud and I was putting my answers down. But one time or a couple times, I say one answer and write down another. So, it was interesting to find how you dealt with things. Also, with adding and subtracting the multiple columns, the carryovers and that sort of thing. It's way back when, in those days, some people can look at those things and get it right there. I had to do columns from right to left, in particular the subtractions. So
I wanted to, if I may, break in with a couple of observations. Our village has offered stronger memory in 2 different sessions, last spring and then again this fall. And here's what I feel like my takeaways are. It is important to have a good leader. Someone who's really dynamic enough to just kind of energize the group a little bit. You don't need to be a cheerleader, but you just need to really be sincere and invested in it. And we had a great facilitator for our first group. And then, oh, sorry, but the sunshine came out, and I think I'm all white. um, Roberta's an amazing leader. For our second group, Roberta was the leader, but had a family emergency come up. Her sister got very, very sick, and she had to bow out, and I had to step in. And I will say it is a commitment, but I mean, it was difficult for me in my position. That's why I have to hand it to Lynn that she's able to keep this up. I felt like it was some work, I really worked hard to find new studies, to talk to the group about, which could be a springboard for conversation. And I sometimes did truth or myth questions like, about dementia, and people, you found that people had these assumptions and they were sometimes not correct. So that was kind of a fun icebreaker. I do feel that it's important that you set realistic expectations from the top. People, and here's, I think, one way to do it is to say, this can be a new resource. This can be a tool in your arsenal for the rest of your life. And maybe you get too busy and you can't keep up with it, but you can always come back to it and then benefit from it again. But it can be a lifelong tool, these 3 exercises. But I think some people came into our group with the expectation that it was just going to be a miracle worker. And it's
Yes.
not. It's a tool. It's a free tool. It's a tool that doesn't involve taking a pill. It's just a behavior change, and it's just a good lifelong habit, like anything is. That's all it is. And I don't mean to belittle it
Minimize.
by saying that's all it is, but it is. Don't expect. I feel like, I remember one person said, "Well, you mean I have to keep doing this to get the results?" Like, yes, because as it turns out, you have to continue to eat healthy food, not just do it for 12 weeks or exercise. Yes, that is. And I think part of the 12-week interval is that it does take time to establish a new habit. So I just
Absolutely.
felt like
Oh, that's a good.
the
I compare it to
expectation
like
setting,
physical exercise, that you have to keep doing it. If you stop
right,
exercising, your muscles are going to get weak again. I do that type of
right.
thing.
And
Yeah.
but I also want to say that Diane pointed to something when she said some of the participants already had a problem with cognition, either a diagnosis or just a concern. I
Right.
tell you what, the most motivated people are the ones who already are experiencing that. If you're coming in as, oh, this can be a fun little game, but you're not really intrinsically motivated the way those folks are, you're not going to come in as committed to it.
So you're following right on that
Mm.
thought. The people, they had expectations, like they said, like you said, they wanted it. But the people who recognized that maybe they were forgetting things a little bit more, and we all forget names or particular things. So that's not in and of itself is not a big thing. It's when it affects your daily living that it becomes an issue. But the people who were dedicated about it, who verbalized about it, they didn't recognize in themselves that there were some things that were better, maybe to a little bit, but they didn't recognize to the degree that other people recognized in them. Like they didn't require the phone call to remind them to do things. They remembered. They followed their calendar. People put things down on the calendar, be it the phone or the paper, but they don't always remember to look at it. This sort of made them remember to look at it. So, you did have the 2 viewpoints. By the same token, I think because of the fact of the ones who might have benefited the most I think actually needed a cheerleader, a personal cheerleader, be it a family member, be it another person in the group. Did you do it today? Okay, let's do it together. So having somebody working on the pages side by side, not necessarily comparing. I did 3 pages. How many pages did you do? That's not important. It's the 10-minute time that you set the timer up and you do it. Clarine, I saw your hand has been up. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted to share that and promoting this. To me, it sounds like something fun to do. But that, I mean, it could be because it's not difficult, it's just
But you
a
know
way
what
to
people
exercise your brain. So I guess clever ways to present it to people so that they don't see it as quote
And the
homework
other
or
advantage, I mean, again, and I will, reiterate this, but the other advantage is in addition to, helping the members, and my members have definitely, those who have participated, have found the value to doing the exercises. But the other advantage really has been the connections amongst members. I can tell you that the majority of the members that are in this group that's been going since May 21 did not know each other ahead of time, or maybe knew in passing, oh, I know him, that's Sydney, but knew nothing about him. And suddenly they know each other. There was a connection, there's a relationship that wasn't there before.
Mhm.
And you can
and
never, particularly when working with older adults who live alone, you can never overvalue the benefits to having more relationships.
Mhm.
that's one of the things that have been focused on many, many times since COVID. The more interactions you have with different groups, the better off you are. The people who only interact with family and then family decreases or moves away, they're very isolated. So having another group is really, really important. The benefits, we hear it, we say it, you eat right, make sure you have the right hydration and stuff. I, as a former PT that did in home health, one of the things we always had to say is, okay, are you drinking enough? Because one of the highlights has been that when you're younger and you get a urinary tract infections, you have some symptoms that you recognize. You go to the bathroom more frequently, or color, or burning, or whatever. When people get older, those symptoms aren't there. What shows up is a little fogginess in the brain or a little disorientation. So family members say, okay, so and so, where it looks like we're starting the dementia, and we say, no, get to the doctor, let the doctor be the one to decide. You don't decide. They do a blood test or a urinalysis and it shows a UTI, get on the antibiotic, and all of a sudden the fog, lifts up. But what highlights, and we have to keep stressing, is people don't recognize the importance of drinking water so much. They say, oh, I drink all day. Well, come to find out, they're sipping all day. They don't even have one glass because they just sipped all day. So little things like that. It might not be pertaining to the brain per se, but it's what's necessary for the brain to have good health. Same
That's
thing
right.
with
That's right. I
nutrition.
think Diane Smith also had a question.
Yeah, I realize it's probably like a crystal ball kind of question, but it's like, have you found that there's an optimal size for these groups?
They
I
only
think it
told us
depends. Oh,
15.
I'm
They
sorry.
told us 15 in the beginning. But it winds up dwindling down. And again, depending on where you are, because it was my plan to mesh the first group and the second group, and that would have made more than the 15. But because they knew the program, I think that could be. Plus, you don't always get everybody every single week. So that makes a difference as well. What about you, Lynn? What did you find?
I was going to say that I think that as is to me an ideal size for any discussion group is 10 to 15 people, and so I just lump it under there in terms of ideal. Now I didn't limit the group, but in my mind that's what's an ideal in terms of being able to have give and take, to be able to have people talking to each other. To me, that's an ideal size.
It is
When
awfully hard, I found, when I had to step in as the facilitator and say, on a given week, 6 people would come and 2 of them were keeping their faces off screen. I mean, you know, you need more than that. You need a little bit more to pull people in. So you're right. I think the stronger memory folks say no more than 15. We started out with 19. And I don't think that hurt it one bit because a few did fall off.
Right.
And I think the group was stronger for having a few more.
Yeah. The thing is also, just having the higher numbers ensures that at any particular week you'll have a decent number. But having said that, when I met with like 2 or 3 the occasional week, it was more in depth with them talking about some things that they found. So no matter what you have, if you can make the best of it. And the important thing is, I think, is what they feel at the end of that weekly meeting, whether it was a good meeting or okay, we talked a little bit too much about this or that, next time let's talk about this. But it goes. I have to say, I don't have an agenda each week. I go with the flow of what did you find out this week, and it sort of just leads on from there. In the manual that you could download, at the bottom of the math questions in particular, there were little excerpts about brain health that were interesting. And as Seal alluded to a little while ago, the big concern why a lot of people want to go into this is the concern about dementia. Either they have a family history of early onset, or they have enough relatives that have it that they're concerned. Um, but little tidbits that you sort of reinforce something in your own mind when you find yourself forgetting names. A lot of people verbalize, I can't remember names like I used to. Well, one of the strategies that they say is when you're introduced to somebody, try to say that name at least 5 times within the first few minutes, or at the very least, remember the first letter of that name. And if you see that face again and you can't think of the name, that letter comes sooner or later. You come, and don't always say, "Oh, I forgot." And I actually got called on this one time. I was at a meeting like this, and I was going to make a point, and it just went out of my mind. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 things going on in the mind at the same time, but what comes out of the mouth is, not. And I said, "Whoops, senior moment." And somebody said, "Please don't say senior moment," and don't say, this is, again, somebody else say, "Oh, I forgot," or "I don't remember." Say, "I don't recall." And think about your brain as a big file box of everything that's you've had learned up to there. So, even when you have a file drawer, you can't get the thing that you want right away without going through multiple files, depending on how you have it organized. So cut yourself some slack, and sometimes taking the stress away. And stress is also a reason for not remembering well. Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, the other question I have, because again, it's kind of how you're advertising it to the community, in the sense of, on one hand, it could be the most helpful to people who are already experiencing memory loss. But on the other hand, that could draw some people away, saying, "Well, I don't want to be part of this group. They all think I can't remember anything." So it seems like there could be a very positive, there'd be a very positive way of, and why, yes, we do this all on our own for the week, but what is the added benefit of meeting? I mean, so how did you couch it to your communities of what are the benefits of us getting together to do this project?
The thing I stressed right from the very beginning is people should not feel like they have to compare with somebody else. It came out in particular with the math. When somebody said, "I find this so easy." Well, some people who are financial officers or CPAs, they would, others who don't, would find it less so, or a little bit more problematic. But the thing I kept stressing was, you are not comparing yourself to anybody else. This is for your own well-being. This is for yourself. Just do the activities, and when we come together, let us know what the thing is, what you found as a problem. What it seemed to be in the very beginning, and if we talk about math, even though everybody got the same directions at the same point in time, You're just doing the math for 10 minutes. You start and just keep going. Some people heard, and because the notebooks had a different guide on it, I think that was part of the reason for a little bit of a confusion. Some people did one page and then they went back to correct it. And, all of that takes time, so they didn't get as many pages done because of the way they did it. So once you got realizing what was uniform, then that was different. I think, Lynn, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the issue of recruitment, which I think is what you were asking about, how to get others interested in signing up for the program. What we did was we didn't necessarily feature it as for those having issues with memory.
Oh, yeah.
I featured it as a brain health. This is a brain health workshop. We all forget things. We all, have times that we wish, we were sharper. This is a way to help that happen. And, so rather than dealing with, it for people who are having issues, I converted it to, like any other exercise. And again, I do use that a lot in terms of the comparison to physical exercise and brain exercise. So
and we didn't
really
either.
fell under the brain
Yeah.
health category, not necessarily a brain illness, if you will.
I'd agree the same thing.
I'm
Because
sorry, Diane?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
And you also couch it in, right? So it's brain health, and then we're doing it together because it can be a fun activity.
exactly.
That's okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I did
Right.
not say, I did, if I gave that illusion, it just happened to be that some people in my groups had the deficits. But the thing is, you know yourselves, sometimes people can have a little bit of a cognitive decline, but meeting for them for the short period of time, you don't pick up. It's only when you're with them for a period of time. So the brain health, and everybody wants to be healthy, either physically with their muscles and bones or mentally. So the brain health was a good umbrella there. And I just
Thank you,
noticed.
Beth. I know you've been in and out. Do you have any questions? You've been kind of quiet.
Who did you ask, Lynn?
Beth?
Oh, I'm just taking it all in. I'm just taking a lot of notes.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure before we ended that if you had any questions, you had the opportunity.
I think we all find there are some cynics who are in our groups, and it's okay. They're bringing up saying, "Oh, these math problems are so easy." You're going to hear that over and over and over. And the point is, we're not trying to solve large, massive equations. It's the repetition. It's using a part of your brain that you are not using otherwise, and it's the repetition and trying to get faster at it. And so you just have to continually say these things to your group. I don't know what's
Clarine?
going to happen at 12 and whether we just get cut off. If we do, I'm sorry, but I'll thank you now in case that happens, for being part of the group. We can go as long as you wish to go.
Clarine has her hand
Well,
up.
I think that one of the things that, see if I read the information right, the stronger memory group is kind of more for people who, quote, don't have diagnosed problems. It's just for all of us. Yeah,
Everybody.
we've all been
That's
talking
right.
about brain health and exercising and activating parts of your brain, that because we don't do math anymore, we use a calculator. I mean, it's simple as that. So if
we don't
that's
write by
correct,
hand as
and
much.
it's not
Even do a phone numbers, you don't
exactly
Right.
right, and it's not a memory cafe. So I mean, that would be for people who have diagnosed or at
That's
least
right.
family. Right? Is that how I can distinguish the difference between that? This is really for
brain health.
everybody. It's why you do Suzuka or however you pronounce it.
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever.
Sudoku, yeah.
Crossword
Right,
puzzles.
and I think that's key, is that it is for everyone. If you're having problems or if you're not
Yeah.
having problems.
Were there any final
It's
questions?
been helpful to me to get this organized in my head a little bit, because I know we have to.
And feel free to reach out if you have questions. Like I said, I've been doing it a while. And also I will say, let me just put in the plug that Goodwin House is very helpful as well. This is their baby and they are happy to watch it grow up. And so if you have questions, ideas, comments, something isn't clear in their materials, reach out to them. They're very good about getting back to you and being helpful.
And don't aim for that 15. Don't feel like I have to have at least the 15 to get
Oh.
going. If it turns out you only have 5, go with the 5, you know. Word of mouth sort of spreads like with anything. And when they recognize that, you know, it's a socialization aspect of getting together and just conversing freely, and having those friendships form, that's a good thing. That word of mouth gets out, and
So
it's
how do we
positive.
decide, if we decide we want to get involved, who do we go to first, or to you, or?
We could answer the questions. Goodwin House is the one that has the manual that you can download and get the math and the writing tabs.
Right, I
Goodwin,
would suggest that if you decide you want to start offering it in your village, you reach out to Goodwin House, tell them you'll be offering it because they do like to know who's using their program. It does seem fair, they've developed it.
I'm
That,
putting the contact in the chat room. I've got to look up Jessica's email address,
Thank
but
you.
yes, I would say
Good.
reach out directly to Jessica Fredrickson.
right,
you.
and you can tell her that, you know, you spoke with us and that, you know, you're interested in using it in your village. She'll be thrilled. And she also runs a monthly facilitators meeting, which I don't often make, but when I do, it's sometimes helpful. And it's certainly for groups starting out is probably really helpful at the beginning.
Yeah.
Here's I'm gonna put her. Here's the challenge. They have recently changed their name of the organization to Goodwin Living. And
Oh, sorry.
I can see that.
Goodwinliving.org, right?
So I think if I just substitute Goodwin House with goodwinliving.org, it will,
Yes.
that is probably for new one. I hope I'm correct on that. But
You are correct, Seal, because when you go to that, there is a part that indicates strong memory, and you could click on the tabs to find information and everything.
okay,
So,
okay. Got it.
Great.
All right.
All right, thank you all.
Well, ladies, since we all were ladies, I thank you for
Well, we're
being
all
part of this
women anyway.
discussion.
yeah.
Glad to
Thank
have
you.
you. There are countless, I've lost count of how many villages are using Stronger Memory now around the country. But I think it's over 30. I think
It's great.
I have to say, I caught myself here a couple times. I am enthusiastic about it, and sometimes I just start talking, you know. I hope I didn't cut anybody
No.
off. You wanted to say something.
You were great, thank you.
Yes.
okay. Great discussion. Thank you all, and
Thank
have
you.
a great week. And we did record this session, so if anybody needs to see it, or we got it, or
Thank
any of the
you.
other breakouts that you didn't sit in.
Thank you.
Haven't figured out how
No.
we're going to distribute those or whatever, make them accessible, but we will get that done. I think we'll
Good.
probably put a link to it as a follow-up after the meeting, and probably in the
Good,
next couple
good.
of days.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
for putting
meeting
all
you
this
all.
together, Theo.
Nice meeting you. Great job.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.